1 week passed. The Taurian High Council met in their great chamber on the homeworld. Their faces appeared as holograms on the ship, large and glowing. Dr. Vela's report had reached them, and it had caused chaos. Some members demanded that the war continue. Humans were still weaker physically. Their technology was still inferior. With enough force, they could be crushed. Others were not so sure. The report described something they did not understand. A species that grew stronger through suffering. A species that refused to break no matter the cost. Such beings were dangerous in ways that weapons and ships could not measure. The debate lasted for 3 days. In the end, a decision was made. The war would pause. Diplomatic contact would be attempted. But first, there was the matter of the prisoners. Commander Brix walked into the medical bay where Kinte was being held. The human was sitting up now. Milo had treated his wounds, and his body was healing. He looked thin and tired, but his eyes were alert. Brix stopped a few feet from the bed. For a moment, the two of them just looked at each other. The commander and the prisoner. The conqueror and the conquered. Except Tay did not look conquered. He looked like someone who was waiting, watching. "The High Council has reviewed your case," Brix said. "And the doctor's report?" Tay said nothing. He just waited. "They've decided to release you. You and the other human prisoner will be returned to your people." For the first time in many days, surprise showed on Tay's face. "Why?" Brix clasped his hands behind his back. "Because you have shown us something we did not expect. Dr. Vela's tests were meant to find your weaknesses. Instead, they found your strength. The Council has decided that a species capable of such endurance is not one to be taken lightly." He paused, choosing his next words carefully. "There will be peace talks. Your leaders and ours will meet. We do not know what will happen next. But for now, the fighting will stop." Tay let this sink in. He had prepared himself to die on this ship. He had prepared himself for endless days of pain and suffering. He had not prepared himself for this. "I am just a soldier," he said. "I did not do anything special. I just refused to give up." Brix shook his head slowly. "That is exactly what makes your species dangerous. Any individual can be a hero. Any human can become unbreakable. We have conquered dozens of worlds, and we have never faced anything like this." He turned to leave, then stopped at the door. "Dr. Vela wishes to speak with you before you go. She is waiting in her office." Tay nodded. He stood up slowly, his legs still weak. But he stood. He always stood. Dr. Vela's office was small and neat. She was sitting behind her desk when Tay entered. She gestured for him to sit in the chair across from her. He sat. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. "I owe you an apology," Dr. Vela finally said. The words seemed difficult for her. "When you first arrived, I saw you as nothing more than a test subject. A primitive creature to be studied and discarded. And now?" Tay asked. "Now I see you as something else entirely." She leaned forward, her black eyes intense. "You changed something in me. For 40 years, I have believed that the Taurian Empire was superior to all other civilizations. That we had earned our place at the top of the galaxy through our intelligence and our technology." She shook her head slowly. "I was wrong. There are other kinds of strength. Other kinds of intelligence. Your species has something we have lost. The ability to endure. To hope. To keep fighting even when victory seems impossible." She paused. "These are valuable things. Perhaps the most valuable things of all." Tay looked at her for a long moment. He could still feel the echoes of pain in his body. The memory of what she had done to him. It would have been easy to hate her. It would have been justified. That hatred was heavy. And he was tired of carrying heavy things. "I forgive you," he said. Dr. Vela's eyes widened. She had not expected that. How can you forgive me? After everything I did? Because holding on to anger would only hurt me, Tay said simply. My grandmother taught me that. She forgave the people who hurt her. Not for them, but for herself. So she could move forward. So she could live. Dr. Vela sat back in her chair. In all her years, no one had ever surprised her as much as this human. Not with his ability to endure pain. Not with his refusal to break. But with his ability to forgive. Your grandmother sounds like a remarkable person, she said quietly. She was. And she passed that strength to her children. And they passed it to me. Tay stood up. That is the secret of humanity, Doctor. We are not strong because we are individuals. We are strong because we are connected. Every generation carries the ones who came before. We never truly die because we live on in those who follow. He walked to the door, then turned back one last time. Maybe your people can learn from us. And maybe we can learn from you. That is what peace is for. He left out an hour later. Kinte walked onto a small transport ship. Park Hannah was already there, waiting for him. She smiled when she saw him. I heard what you did, she said. The guards could not stop talking about it. The human who would not scream. Tay sat down next to her, suddenly very tired. I screamed once. At the end, but you did not break. No, I did not break. The ship lifted off and left a Taurian vessel behind. Through the window, they could see the stars stretching out before them. Somewhere out there was Earth. Hannah looked at Tay's face. He was staring out the window, lost in thought. What are you thinking about? She asked. My family, he said. My father used to tell me stories about our ancestors. Farmers and soldiers and workers. People who lived hard lives and never gave up. He turned to look at her. I used to think those were just stories. Now I understand. They were not just stories. They were lessons. Instructions for how to survive when everything seems hopeless. Hannah nodded. My mother was the same. She always said that being Korean meant carrying the weight of history on your shoulders. All the suffering. All the survival. All the strength. It is not just Koreans, Tay said. It is all humans. Every culture on Earth has stories like that. Stories of endurance. Stories of hope. He looked back out at the stars. The Taurians thought they understood us. They read our biology reports. They measured our physical abilities. But they missed the most important thing. What is that? Our spirit. Our will. The thing inside us that refuses to stop, no matter what. The ship flew on through the darkness of space, back on the Taurian vessel. Dr. Vela was writing her final report. Her hands moved slowly across the keyboard. She had to get the words exactly right. The fate of two civilizations might depend on them. She wrote about Kinte, about his endurance, about his forgiveness, about the strange light in his eyes that never went out. No matter how much pain he suffered, and at the end, she wrote a recommendation that would change the Taurian Empire forever. Humans should be reclassified immediately. They are not Category 7, primitive. They are Category 2, strategic threat. Not because of their technology, not because of their numbers, but because of what lives inside them. A fire that cannot be extinguished. A strength that cannot be measured. Any war with humanity will be long, costly, and uncertain. I recommend immediate diplomatic engagement and, if possible, alliance. She signed the report and sent it to the High Council. Then she sat back and thought about the human who had changed everything. A simple soldier from a small planet. He had walked into her medical bay as a prisoner, and he had walked out as something else entirely. A symbol. A warning. A hope. She did not know if peace would last between their peoples. She did not know what the future held. But she knew one thing for certain. She would never underestimate humans again. Far away, the transport ship carrying Kim Tae and Park Hannah entered Earth's solar system. The blue planet grew larger in the window. Home was waiting. Tae closed his eyes and smiled. He had left Earth as a soldier. He was returning as something more. A messenger. A bridge between two worlds. Whatever happened next, he would face it the way he had faced everything else. One breath at a time. And somewhere in the stars, a new chapter was beginning. Not a chapter of war, but of possibility. Of two species learning to see each other as equals. All because one human refused to break. Dr. Vela could not sleep that night. She lay in her bed in her private quarters, staring at the ceiling. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Kim Tae's face. She saw his eyes burning through the pain. She heard his broken laugh. Finally, she gave up trying to sleep. She got up and walked to her desk. The room was dark, except for the soft blue light of her computer screen. She opened the database and typed in one word. Humans. Thousands of files appeared. Most of them she had already seen. Basic biology. Physical limitations. Dietary needs. Nothing special. Nothing that explained what she had witnessed. She dug deeper. There were files about human history. She had never read them before. She had never thought they would be useful. Now, she read them with growing amazement. Humans had lived through ice ages. When the temperatures dropped so low that most species would have died, humans survived. They made clothes from animal skins. They built fires. They adapted. Humans had survived diseases that killed millions of their kind. Something called the Black Death had killed nearly half of their population once. And yet they had recovered. They had grown stronger. There were wars. So many wars. Humans had fought each other for thousands of years. They had invented terrible weapons. They had destroyed entire cities. And still, they kept going. They rebuilt. They moved forward. Dr. Vela found one file particularly disturbing. It described something humans called persistence hunting. Long ago, before they had weapons, humans would hunt animals by simply following them. The animals were faster, but humans could run for longer. They would chase their prey for hours, sometimes days, until the animal collapsed from exhaustion. Humans were not the strongest. They were not the fastest. But they did not give up. They kept going long after any other creature would have stopped. She found records of human soldiers who had fought with missing limbs. Stories of people who had survived for weeks without food or water. Tales of mothers who had lifted objects that should have been too heavy for them to save their children. There was something inside humans that other species did not have. Dr. Vela did not know what to call it. Stubbornness? Madness? Or something else entirely. She thought about the Taurian Empire. For thousands of years, they had been the strongest civilization in this part of the galaxy. They had conquered dozens of worlds. They had never met a species they could not defeat. But humans were different. The Taurians won their battles with technology, with superior weapons and faster ships. They had forgotten what it meant to fight with nothing but their own bodies and their own will. Humans had never forgotten. A knock at her door interrupted her thoughts. She stood up and pressed the panel to open it. Commander Brix stood outside. He was a tall Taurian with dark blue skin and cold, intelligent eyes. He was in charge of all military operations on the ship. "You wanted to see me, Doctor," he said. It was not a question. "Yes, please come in." Brix entered the room and looked around. His eyes stopped on her computer screen, where human history files were still displayed. "I received your message," he said. "You said we have made a mistake." "What did you mean?" Dr. Vela sat down and gestured for him to do the same. He remained standing. "I have been testing the human prisoner," she said, "conducting pain tolerance experiments. I know. I approve them. Then you should know what the results show. Dr. Vela pulled up her data on the screen. This creature has endured pain levels that would kill any Taurian, any Valkyrie, any species in our records. And he did not break. He did not beg. He barely even screamed. Brix looked at the data without expression. Perhaps this individual is unusual. An anomaly. That is what I thought at first. But I have been reading about their species. She turned to face him. They are all like this. Their entire history is filled with stories of survival, of endurance, of refusing to surrender no matter how much they suffer. Brix was quiet for a moment. What are you suggesting, Doctor? I am suggesting that we have underestimated them badly. We thought humans were weak because their bodies are fragile. We thought they would be easy to conquer. But their strength is not physical. It is something deeper. Something in their minds. In their spirits. She stood up and walked to the window. Outside, the stars stretched endlessly into the dark. If we go to war with humanity, we might win the first battles, she said. Our ships are faster. Our weapons are stronger. But we will not defeat them easily. They will fight us on every world we take. They will never stop resisting. They will make us pay for every step we advance. Brix came to stand beside her. The High Council believes the war will be over in months. The High Council is wrong. The words hung in the air between them. It was dangerous to speak against the High Council. But Dr. Vela did not care anymore. She had seen the truth with her own eyes. Far below them, in another part of the ship, another conversation was happening. Park Hannah sat in her cell, her back against the cold wall. She was the only other human on the ship. She had been captured at the same battle as Kim Tae, but she was an engineer, not a soldier. They had not tested her. They had simply locked her away. But she had heard things. The guards talked among themselves, not realizing she could understand some of their language. She had learned it during her training, studying enemy communications. They were talking about the human who would not scream "Dot" at first. She did not know who they meant. Then she realized it had to be Tae. She remembered him from the station. A quiet man who kept to himself. She had not known him well. Now she felt proud of him. He was showing the Taurians what humans were made of. One of the guards walked past her cell. He was young, and he looked scared. Not of her, but of something else. "Hey," she called out. The guard stopped and looked at her nervously. "What do you want?" "The human they are testing." "Is he okay?" The guard hesitated. "He is alive. Will they release him?" "I do not know." The guard glanced around to make sure no one was listening. "But you should know something. The doctor who was testing him. She has stopped. She does not want to continue." Hannah leaned forward. "Why?" The guard's voice dropped to a whisper. "Because she's afraid of him. She is afraid of all of you." He turned and walked away quickly. Hannah sat back against the wall. A smile spread across her face. The Taurians had expected to find animals. Weak creatures who would break under pressure. Instead, they have found humans, and now they were afraid. Back in Dr. Vela's quarters, the conversation continued. "What do you want me to do?" Brix asked. "The war has already begun. We cannot simply stop." "I am not asking you to stop the war," Dr. Vela said. "I am asking you to reconsider our approach. We should try diplomacy, negotiation. These humans, they might make better allies than enemies." Brix looked at her for a long time. "You have changed, Doctor. When this mission began, you called humans primitive. You laughed at the idea that they could challenge us. I was wrong." It was hard for her to say those words. She had never been wrong before. But the truth was the truth. I spent 3 days trying to break one human. One single human. And I failed. If one of them can resist like that, What will happen when we face millions? Billions? Briggs turned away from the window. I will speak to the council. I will share your findings. But I cannot promise they will listen. Make them listen, Dr. Vela said. For all our sakes. Briggs left without another word. Dr. Vela sat down heavily in her chair. She was exhausted, but she knew she would not sleep tonight. She thought about Kim Tae, lying in the medical bay. She had tried to break him, and he had broken her instead. Not with violence, not with anger, just with the quiet, unshakable strength of a human who refused to give up. For the first time in her long career, Dr. Vela felt something she had never felt before. Respect. Deep. Genuine respect for a species she had once considered beneath her notice. The universe, she realized, was far more complicated than she had believed, and humans were at the center of that complication. 3 days had passed since the first session. Each day, Dr. Vela came to the medical bay. Each day, she increased the pain levels. Each day, Kim Tae refused to break. His body was weak now. The healing machines they used on him could fix the physical damage, but they could not fix the exhaustion. They could not fix the weight that had settled into his bones. He had lost weight. His face was thin and pale. Dark circles had formed under his eyes, but those eyes were still alive. They still burned with that quiet fire that Dr. Vela could not understand. She stood in front of him now, her arms crossed over her chest. The medical bay was silent, except for the soft beeping of machines. Today, we will try something different, she said. I have studied your biology more carefully. Humans have an interesting system in their brains. When you experience too much pain, your body releases chemicals that help you cope. It is a survival mechanism. She walked to a different machine and pressed several buttons. This device will block those chemicals. Your brain will not be able to protect you anymore. You will feel everything at full strength. Milo, who was standing near the door, took a step forward. Doctor, that procedure is classified as extreme. The council must approve it before. The council is not here, Dr. Vela said sharply. I am, and I will know the limits of this species. She turned back to Tae. There was something wild in her eyes now. Something obsessed. Do you understand what this means, human? She asked. There will be no relief. No escape, just pain. Pure and endless pain. Tae looked at her. His voice was rough from days of silent suffering, but his words were clear. I understand. Dr. Vela attached new devices to his head. Then she picked up her controller and pressed the button. The pain that hit Tae was unlike anything before. It was not just in his body. It was in his mind. It was in his soul. Every memory he had became painful. Every thought was wrapped in fire. He could not even find comfort in memories of home because those memories now hurt him too. This time, his control broke. He screamed. The sound filled the medical bay. It was a terrible sound. The sound of a man being torn apart from the inside. Milo covered his ears and turned away. Even some of the guards outside the room shifted uncomfortably. Dr. Vela watched the screens. Her heart was beating fast. Finally, she thought. Finally, I found his limit. But then something strange happened. Tae stopped screaming. The sound died in his throat. His body was still shaking. Tears were streaming down his face. But he was not screaming anymore. Instead, he was laughing. It was a small laugh. Broken and painful, but it was real. Dr. Vela stared at him in shock. What is funny? She demanded. Why are you laughing? Tae turned his head to look at her. His face was wet with tears and sweat. Blood was dripping from his nose again. But he was smiling. My grandmother, he said, his voice barely above a whisper. She lived through the war. The old war on Earth. Many years ago. Dr. Vela did not understand why he was talking about this. What does that have to do with anything? She was captured, Tay continued. For 2 years, she was a prisoner. They did terrible things to her. Things I cannot describe. He paused to take a painful breath. When she was finally freed, she was broken in body, but not in spirit. She raised my mother. My mother raised me. She always told me stories about my grandmother. He looked directly into Dr. Vela's eyes. My grandmother survived for 2 years. I have only been here for a few days. How can I break when she did not? How can I give up when her blood runs in my veins? Dr. Vela stood completely still. She did not know what to say. You think pain can break humans, Tay said. But you do not understand. Pain is part of our history. We have lived with pain for thousands of years. We have fought through pain. We have built our world through pain. It is not our enemy. His voice grew stronger. It is our teacher. The machines continued to send pain signals into his body. The screen showed readings that should be impossible. Any other species would be dead by now. Their hearts would have stopped. Their brains would have shut down, but Kim Tae was still alive. Still talking. Still looking at her with those burning eyes. Dr. Vela felt something she had not felt in many years. Fear. Not fear of him physically. He was strapped to a table. He could not hurt her. But she was afraid of what he represented. She was afraid of a species that could endure this much pain and still find the strength to laugh, to remember, to hope. Turn it off, she said quietly. Milo rushed to the controls. Doctor? I said turn it off. The machines went silent. The pain stopped. Tay's body relaxed against the table, but he did not pass out. He just lay there, breathing slowly, looking at the ceiling. Dr. Vela walked to her desk and sat down heavily. Her hands were shaking. She looked at them with surprise. She had not shaken like this since she was a student. Leave us, she said to Milo. Wait outside. Milo hesitated, then nodded and left the room. For a long time, Dr. Vela and Tay were alone in silence. The only sound was his ragged breathing and the quiet hum of machines. Finally, Dr. Vela spoke. I have been a medical officer for 40 years. I have studied hundreds of species. I have never seen anything like you. Tay did not respond. He was too tired. Your body should have failed, she continued. Your heart should have stopped. Your brain should have shut down to protect itself. But you kept going. You kept fighting. She paused. Why? Tay turned his head slowly to look at her. Because I am not just one person, he said. I carry everyone who came before me. My parents, my grandparents, their parents before them. Thousands of years of humans who suffered and survived. I cannot betray them. I cannot let their strength be wasted. Dr. Vela thought about her own ancestors. The Taurians had lived comfortable lives for thousands of years. They had technology that protected them from pain, from hunger, from hardship. They had evolved to become intelligent, but perhaps they had lost something in the process. We thought humans were weak because your bodies are fragile, she said quietly. We were wrong. Your strength is not in your bodies. It is somewhere else. Somewhere we cannot see or measure. Tay closed his eyes. Now you understand. Dr. Vela stood up and walked to the door. She stopped with her hand on the panel. I will not continue these tests, she said. There is nothing more I can learn from hurting you. She opened the door and stepped outside. Milo was waiting there, nervous and confused. Call Commander Bricks, Dr. Vela said. Tell him I need to speak with him. Tell him it is urgent. What should I tell him it is about? Milo asked. Dr. Vela looked back at the room where Kim Tae lay on the metal table. For the first time, she did not see a primitive creature. She saw something else. something that frightened her. "Tell him," she said slowly, "that we have made a terrible mistake. Tell him that humans are not what we thought they were." She walked away down the long corridor, her footsteps echoing in the cold silence of the ship. Behind her, in the medical bay, Kim Tae allowed himself to smile one more time before sleep finally took him. He had won. The first wave of pain hit Kim Tae like fire running through his blood. It started in his chest and spread outward to his arms, his legs, his fingers and toes. Every nerve in his body screamed at once. His back arched against the metal table. His hands closed into tight fists. But he did not open his mouth. He did not make a sound. Dr. Vela watched the screens next to her. Numbers and lines moved across them quickly. She nodded slowly. "Level 1, she said to Milo. "His pain response is normal. Heart rate increased by 40%. Muscle tension is high." She looked at Tae. "How do you feel, human?" Tae opened his eyes and looked at her. Sweat was already forming on his forehead. His jaw was tight, but his eyes were clear. "I have felt worse," he said. His voice was steady. Dr. Vela's eyes narrowed slightly. She had not expected him to speak. Most subjects were already crying by now. She pressed another button on her controller. Level 2. The pain doubled. It felt like someone was pushing hot needles into every part of his body at the same time. Tae's whole body shook. He bit down hard, and he tasted blood in his mouth. He had bitten his own tongue, but still, he did not scream. Milo stepped closer to the screens. His face was pale. "Doctor, his readings are very high. His body is under extreme stress." "I can see that," Dr. Vela said. She did not look away from Tae. Level 3. The third wave was worse than anything Tae had ever experienced. It was like being burned alive from the inside. His vision went white for a moment. He could hear his own heart beating so fast it sounded like a drum. He thought he might die. For a second, he almost wished he would. But then he thought about his father. His father had been a soldier too, many years ago. He had been captured once during a small conflict in Southeast Asia. They had kept him for 2 weeks. They had done terrible things to him, but he had survived. He had come home. "Pain is just a message," his father used to say. "Your body is telling you something is wrong, but you do not have to listen. You can choose to hear the message and then set it aside. Pain does not control you. You control yourself." Tae focused on those words. He let the pain wash over him like a wave. He felt it, he accepted it, and then he pushed it to the side of his mind. It was still there, but it was not everything anymore. Dr. Vela was staring at her screens with confusion on her face. "This is not possible," she said quietly. "What is it, doctor?" Milo asked. "His pain levels are off the charts. Any Taurian would be unconscious by now. Any Valkyrie would be dead." She turned to look at Tae, but he is still awake, still aware, still. She searched for the right word. Still fighting. Tae met her eyes. Through the pain, through the sweat and the blood in his mouth, he managed to smile. It was small and tired, but it was real. "Is that all you have?" He whispered. For a moment, Dr. Vela did not move. She just stood there, looking at him. Something flickered in her black eyes. Was it anger? Curiosity? Or something else? "Level 4, she said. Her voice was harder now. The fourth wave hit Tae like a hammer made of lightning. His whole body jerked against the straps. Every muscle locked up at once. He could not breathe. He could not think. There was only pain. This time, a sound escaped from him. Not a scream, but a low groan that came from deep in his chest. He hated himself for it. He had promised himself he would stay silent, but he did not beg. He did not ask her to stop. He just gripped the edges of the metal table so hard that his knuckles turned white, and he held on. Minutes passed, or maybe hours. Tay could not tell anymore. Time had become meaningless. There was only the pain and the cold metal beneath him, and the bright lights above. Dr. Vela increased the level again and again. Each time, she expected him to break. Each time, she was wrong. By level 6, Milo had stepped back from the screens. His hands were shaking. "Doctor, please," he said. "This is too much. No living creature should be able to survive this." "And yet he is surviving," Dr. Vela said. There was something different in her voice now. The arrogance was still there, but underneath it was something new. Was it respect, or was it fear? Tay's body was damaged now. The constant pain signals had caused small wounds to open on his skin. Blood dripped from his nose. His muscles had torn in several places from the constant tension. But his eyes were still open, and they were still looking at her. "Why do you not scream?" Dr. Vela asked. She stepped closer to the table. "Why do you not beg me to stop?" Any creature would. Any intelligent being would try to end their suffering. Tay took a shaking breath. It hurt to breathe. Everything hurt. "Because," he said slowly, his voice rough and broken, "if I scream, you win. And I do not let people like you win." Dr. Vela stood very still. In all her years as a medical officer, she had never met a subject like this. She had broken soldiers from a dozen different species. She had made warriors cry like children. But this human, this small, fragile creature from a small, fragile planet, refused to give her what she wanted. She looked at the controller in her hand. There were still more levels. She could go higher. She could push him until his heart stopped. But something made her hesitate. "We will continue tomorrow," she said suddenly. She pressed a button, and the pain stopped. Tay's body went limp against the table. He was breathing in short, painful gasps. His whole body was covered in sweat and blood, but he was alive. And he had not broken. Milo rushed to check the monitors. "He needs medical attention, doctor. His body has suffered severe trauma." "Then give him medical attention, doctor," Vela said. She was already walking toward the door. "Fix him. Heal him." She stopped at the door and looked back at Tay one more time. "I want him ready for tomorrow." She left the room. Milo stood alone with Tay. He looked down at the human with wide eyes. "How?" he whispered. "How did you do that?" Tay turned his head slowly to look at the young Taurian. His face was pale, and his eyes were tired, but there was still a spark of life in them. "We are human," he said simply. "This is what we do." Milo did not understand what that meant. But as he began treating Tay's wounds, he found himself thinking about it. What kind of species could endure such pain and still find the strength to speak? What kind of world created beings like this? He had always been taught that humans were primitive, weak, barely worth studying. Now he was not so sure. In her private quarters, Dr. Vela sat alone in the dark. She was thinking about the human's eyes, the way he had looked at her through all that pain. There had been no hatred in those eyes, no anger, just a quiet, burning determination. She had seen that look before in old recordings from the wars. She had seen it in the eyes of Taurian soldiers who were about to die. It was the look of someone who had already accepted their fate but refused to surrender. She did not sleep well that night. And in the medical bay, strapped to his cold metal table, Tay finally allowed himself to close his eyes. His body hurt more than he could describe. But in his heart, he felt something warm. Pride that he had survived day one. Whatever came next, he would face it the same way, one breath at a time. The ship was cold. Everything about it was cold. The walls were made of some dark metal that Tay did not recognize. The lights above him were too bright and too white. They hurt his eyes, but he did not close them. He kept them open and watched. Two guards walked on either side of him. They were tall creatures, taller than any human he had ever seen. Their skin was pale blue, almost like ice. Their eyes were large and black, like the eyes of deep-sea fish. They did not look at him. To them, he was nothing. He was just cargo. Tay's hands were bound behind his back with some kind of energy restraint. It did not hurt, but he could not move his wrists at all. His feet were bare against the cold floor. They had taken his boots. They had taken everything except the simple gray clothes they had given him. He remembered the battle. It had happened 3 days ago, or maybe 4. He was not sure anymore. His unit had been protecting a small research station on one of Jupiter's moons when the Taurian ships came. There were too many of them. The fight was short. Most of his team died in the first few minutes. Tay had fought until his weapon was empty. Then he had fought with his hands. Then they had hit him with something that made his whole body go numb, and everything went dark. When he woke up, he was here. On this ship. A prisoner. The guards stopped in front of a large door. One of them pressed his hand against a panel on the wall. The door slid open with a soft sound. They pushed Tay inside. The room was large and very clean. There were machines everywhere. Some of them beeped quietly. Others had screens that showed numbers and shapes he did not understand. In the center of the room was a metal table with straps on it. A female Taurian stood near the table. She was different from the guards. She was shorter, and her blue skin was lighter, almost silver. She wore white clothes that looked like a doctor's uniform. Her black eyes studied Tay as he was brought in. She said something to the guards in their language. It sounded like water running over stones. The guards forced Tay to sit on the table. They pushed him down on his back and strapped his arms and legs to the metal surface. Then they left without a word. The female walked closer. She looked down at Tay like someone looking at an insect. "Can you understand me?" she asked. Her voice was cold and flat. She spoke his language, but the words sounded strange coming from her mouth. Tay did not answer. He just looked at her dot. She made a small sound that might have been a laugh. "My name is Dr. Vela. I am the chief medical officer on this vessel. Do you know why you are here?" Again, Tay said nothing. Dr. Vela did not seem to care about his silence. She picked up a small device from a nearby table and pointed it at his chest. A blue light came from it and moved slowly across his body. "Interesting," she said quietly to herself. "Your species is even more primitive than I expected. Your bones are weak. Your skin is thin. Your organs are poorly protected." She put down the device and looked at him again. "How did your kind even survive on your planet?" Tay still did not speak, but something changed in his eyes. A small light. A small fire. Dr. Vela noticed it. She tilted her head slightly, like a bird looking at something strange. "You do not like what I say," she said. "Good. That means you understand." She walked to a large machine near the wall. It had many wires coming from it. At the end of each wire was a small metal disc. "I am going to run some tests on you," Dr. Vela said. "The Taurian Empire needs to understand your species better. You are the first human we have captured alive." She began attaching the discs to his head, his chest, his arms. "These tests will measure your physical responses, your strength, your speed, your ability to heal." She paused and looked into his eyes. "And your ability to handle pain." Tay felt his heart beat faster, but he kept his face calm. He had been trained for this. Every soldier in the Earth Defense Force learned how to resist interrogation, how to stay quiet, how to survive. "Most species we have encountered are very sensitive to pain," Dr. Vela continued. "The Valkyrie pass out almost immediately. The Morix begin screaming before we even start. But I have read some reports about humans. Some researchers believe you might be slightly more resistant than average." She smiled, but it was not a kind smile. "I think they are wrong. I think you will break just like all the others." A young Taurian male entered the room. He was thin and nervous-looking. He carried a datapad and stood near the door, as if he was afraid to come closer. "Ah, Milo," Dr. Vela said. "Come here. You will assist me today." Milo walked over slowly. He looked at Tay with something that might have been pity. Or maybe fear. "Is this necessary, Doctor?" he asked quietly. "The Council said we only needed basic biological data." Dr. Vela turned to him sharply. "I decide what is necessary. This creature's species attacked 3 of our border stations last month. They killed over 200 of our people. I want to know everything about them. I want to know their limits." Milo nodded, but did not look happy. Dr. Vela turned back to Tay. She held a small controller in her hand. "This machine will send pain signals directly into your nervous system. It is very precise. I can control exactly how much pain you feel. We will start at level 1 and increase from there." She leaned closer to him. Her breath was cold against his face. "In my experience, no species has ever lasted past level 5. Most beg for death by level 4. She stood up straight again. "Let us see what humans are made of." Tay took a slow breath. He thought about his home. He thought about the small apartment in Seoul where he grew up. He thought about his mother's cooking and his father's old war stories. He thought about his sister, who was probably worried about him right now. He thought about all the people who came before him, all the generations of his family who had survived wars and hunger and pain. They had not broken. He would not break either. Dr. Vela watched him carefully. She expected to see fear in his eyes. She expected to see panic. But all she saw was something she did not understand. Something calm. Something still. "You are either very brave or very stupid," she said. "We will find out which one soon." She pressed a button on her controller, and the pain began. But Kim Tae did not make a sound. He just closed his eyes, took another breath, and waited. Dr. Vela stared at the readings on her screen. Then she stared at him. For the first time since he had arrived, she looked uncertain. She wrote in her notes, "Subject appears docile. Minimal resistance expected." She had never been more wrong in her life.